This is Think Smart with TMFG, your weekly podcast of what's newsworthy and relevant to everyday Canadians, with your host, Senior Financial Advisor Rob McClelland, and Mike Connon of Assante Capital Management. Today on Think Smart with TMFG, Mike and I are going to be discussing resistance is the enemy. Mike, successful financial planning, successful investing, the biggest enemy out there is resistance.
People always resist change, don't they?
They do. I've been reading this great book by Steven Pressfield, and it's called the Daily Pressfield. It was recommended by Nick Murray, one of our mentors. And he talks about resistance, and he's writing a book to help authors write articles, write books. And he says every day an author gets up and they face resistance in what they want to do and what they want to accomplish. And he also talks about that in life, we face so much resistance all the time.
Success is pushing through that generally, isn't it?
It is. And so what I thought might be helpful for our audience today is to talk about what's some of the resistance that we see from our clients that prevents us from doing a really good job.
Yeah. You know, people can very easily have a successful life, and many times it's their own resistance that stops them.
So we're going to go through and look at the top 10 things that our clients have resisted doing over the last 10 years. We're going to use a little AI to help us, and AI has been extremely helpful in us, broadening the depth of our podcasts.
I've been more resistant to AI than you.
Yeah. You know me, I love going in, at 2 feet all the way in. I also will point out that this is the first time that Mike and I have been doing a podcast with a third person in the room. You and I have just been doing this where we started doing them at Tim Hortons, and then we've been doing it lonely in this room. We now have our marketing manager. She's down here. She's filming us, and we're going to be coming to YouTube fairly soon. So that's exciting for us. So we have to be on our game. So let's get started. Number one thing that I see, and this is for clients that are pre-retired, resisting, is they are resisting increasing their savings. And so what do I mean by that? Let's say they're putting away $500 a month, and we know that every year there's inflation, and we ask them next year can you increase that savings to $550 a month or $525 or maybe $600? And they resist. And so that is... The price of goods is going up, their income's going up most years, but if they're not increasing their savings, they're falling behind.
I guess that would always be the one way to fight inflation, wouldn't it? To increase your savings. The trick with increase in savings is, that sounds easy. Easy to do, right? You should increase your savings. Let's flip it over. Decrease your spending.
That's difficult to do.
And that's the reality. Increase in savings is basically decrease in spending, which needs to be done, or not spending. As you said, people have been getting raises, so incomes have been going up and inflation is there too. But if you go and get that income increase and you don't start increasing your savings along with your spending, you're going to have less value for the future you.
So when I reached out to AI and said, what are the reasons why you need to increase your savings? There were 3 things that showed up. Number one, it helps to build financial security. You feel safer, you feel better if you've increased your savings. Number 2, achieving your long-term goals. So if you're not increasing your savings, you're less likely to achieve those goals. And finally, reducing financial stress. The more money you have, the less stressed you are. You're not worried about the next paycheck coming in and the next bill that might come your way. Number 2, in terms of resistance, Mike, is holding on to old investments.
Yeah, people, they almost treat them like kids, don't they?
Well, so let's give an example. A client may have put $10,000, $20,000 into an investment. That investment has gone down 50%, 75%. The company's still around. It's still alive. But they don't want to sell. They want to at least get their money back that they put into it. And they'll hold on to it sometimes for 1, 2, 3, 4 years, and it's having an impact. It's going to have an impact on their return. Typically, the investment in the first place was a long shot. It probably wasn't a blue chip investment. And it may even get worse. It may go from 75% to down 100%. and yet people want to hold on to it.
I think you got to always remember is investments have emotions, don't have emotions. People have emotions. And people think that because an investment lost the money, it owes them something. The investment doesn't care about you. It doesn't even know who you are. So people get emotional attachment to non-emotional things. And again, emotions always get in the way.
So AI had to say, number one, opportunity cost of taking that money and putting it into something that might be doing better. Number two, emotional and cognitive biases. So you're holding on to something, just as Mike said, because you're attached to it. And finally, number three, it's going to impact the returns of your portfolio. It's going to be portfolio drag. That's not a good thing. Number three, and this is probably one of the biggest things that we see, is not consolidating your investments. Mike, why do our clients resist that?
People have the idea, it's funny, when you talk about diversification, people have this idea, we always say diversification is a great thing. And somehow people have confused diversification with having investments all over the place. They're two totally different things. And I see people using 3 or 4 banks, they use 3 or 4 investment companies. And the more spread out they are, the less idea they have how to run efficient portfolio. An efficient portfolio needs to be run together by one person who understands your tax circumstance, who understands your income needs, and what you need out of your portfolio to achieve your long-term goals.
If we think of a dimensional client, typically they have over 13,000 companies in their portfolio. So extremely diversified. Even in the fixed income, there's over 1,000 individual bond holdings in the portfolio. Real estate, over 400 individual in publicly traded REITs in the portfolio. So that's already diversified. So what is the impact of not consolidating? And there's 3 things. One, cost efficiency. You're going to, especially under our model, your fees will go down if you consolidate your investments.
Yep.
And typically you're actually paying more in fees at those other institutions than you are with us here at Assante. And so your fees can go down by consolidating. It helps to simplify your life. And it helps to improve strategic planning. We don't need to go and say, because Mike and I don't have an idea on how those other investments are doing, how they're invested, if it's changed from where it was, whether that advisor's triggered capital gains. Consolidating is your friend. It helps to simplify everything. It makes life a lot easier.
Today, I was giving advice on someone, with these new capital gain rules, rates that have come in, trying to trigger gains on accounts that aren't even under my control, because it just makes sense. And they're meeting with me, but they haven't met with some other person at this time. And it's going to be too late by the time they get there. So again, this is stuff where you need one person who is really concerned about your future rather than 10 people who don't really care about you.
Number 4, coming in for regular account reviews. Had a client this morning and he said, "Oh, I know, Rob, you're going to want to see me in 4 months. You want to talk in 4 months." And I said, "Absolutely, I do. And it's important." And why is it important that our clients come in for regular reviews, Mike? What's helpful? What's the advantage to them?
Well, the advantage is people's lives change. And no one's life is always the same. And they need someone to be looking at all these changes in life and keep them up to date. Number 1, their life changes. Number 2, the government rules change. And number 3, investments change. So there's all these things that are all in motion at all periods in time. And if you go and ignore it for, let's say, a year, you might miss out on a lot of opportunity that you could have had.
I also think one of the pieces that the advisor provides, we try and provide a lot of client education. And the more educated a client is, the more easier it is to understand the strategy, the more likely they are to stick with the strategy and have great investment success. If we're only seeing you once a year, it's really tough to jam in some client education into that one meeting.
Yep.
So a lot of our clients we like to see 3 times a year, every 4 months. We used to do it 4 times a year. That was probably too much. 3 times seems to be the right mix for most of our clients.
Yeah, it depends on the complexity too. I have a lot of corporate people with corporations. They probably need 4 times a year. There's that much going on. When to take dividends, where they should be. Any triggers, gains should be triggered inside those accounts. So they need, different situations need more care.
Maybe they like seeing you more often. Maybe that's what
that must be it.
Because they only want to see me 3 times max. And that's
unfortunately that's on video now, so people won't believe that.
Exactly. Next up is allowing us to rebalance your portfolios. So this doesn't typically happen most of the time. But it certainly does happen when there's market volatility. When the markets are going up and down, and mostly down, they're concerned about rebalancing. But sometimes when markets are going up, they don't want to take from the winners and put into the ones that haven't done as well, or the losers.
It's funny, Jordan, when COVID really hit, I always remember because it was March break, around March when we had everything really closed down. And I was taking my son to Mont Tremblant to go on a ski trip. And all the rebalance had come in because the markets had made a big switch. And we sent out all the letters to rebalance. The whole entire drive, the guy next to me was watching me on the phone with every client, trying to talk them into rebalance, and watching every conversation as I'm talking to everyone into trying to do a rebalance with every reason. And it may have been the greatest rebalance opportunity we've ever seen.
Yeah.
It was funny because when COVID hit, the markets dropped by 30% in literally a week or so. And within a month, they were back up again. So it was the biggest opportunity that was ever out there. And still the resistance we had to that rebalance was stunning.
Yeah, that was tremendous resistance. So number one, what's the textbook say? It helps you maintain your desired risk level. If you're supposed to be 60% in stocks, 40% in bonds, rebalancing allows you to do that, take from the winners and move to some of the excess profits into the ones that aren't doing as well. So that when they have their turn on the podium, you've got the right amount in that. Number two, it helps to enhance long-term returns. And finally, stay aligned with your goals. If you're supposed to be in a 60-40 portfolio, you're not going to be comfortable in a 70-30 or an 80-20 if the market has a big correction. Yeah. You're not going to be happy. You're going to lose sleep at night.
Remember, it's not if, it's when.
It's when. Yeah. Yes, thank you. Number six, bringing in tax returns and notice of assessments. Why? Why the resistance, Mike?
It's funny, when I don't have a tax return notice assessment, it's like going in to see a doctor and say, my knee hurts, can you just do surgery? And they say, well, I want to do is X-ray and an MRI before. You go, no, just go in and figure it out. You're so blind. I mean, the tax returns give us idea to the soul of everything that's going on. And when we can't see that, we're making guesses and assumptions. And whenever you make guesses, assumptions, you're going to leave room for errors and you're going to miss opportunities.
We've done a few things internally to make that easy, where we now can access their CRA account. It's just a look. We can't change anything, but gives us a look at the notice of assessment and the tax return. But really, it's almost critical that we have that. And it's so, as you're saying, it's so difficult to work with clients where we don't have that information. And we're supposed to develop a financial plan from that. And we don't know what's really going on from a tax point of view.
Yeah.
And so there's three things that come up. AI, come back, chat, said, number one, identify tax saving opportunities. You may be missing some things that could reduce your tax bill.
Yep.
Number two, there could be mistakes made. How many times have we found mistakes, even with a good accountant who's missed something?
I'd say 10% of the time there is a mistake. 1 out of 10 returns I go through, there's an error or something that could have been done better.
So it's critical that you bring in your tax returns and notice of assessments every year, so we have a good idea on what's going on. Next up, wills, powers of attorney. Lots of resistance. Lots of resistance in getting the wills done. Lots of resistance of bringing the wills in, powers of attorney. I always ask this question. When was the last time your lawyer called you and said, Mike, you need to get your wills and powers of attorney updated?
Never happens.
Never.
Even great lawyers. We know great lawyers, and it doesn't happen from the great lawyers out there.
So we've taken it upon ourselves as advisors to do that. And I think that's a good thing, but we still get resistance. I would guess if I went and looked today, we'd probably still have only have probably 60% of wills and powers of attorney from some of our best clients.
Yeah. And sometimes you wonder why the resistance. Sometimes I understand resistance. There's no cost. It's done for free. There's no cost. You bring in the will. We'll go through. We have something we call a will schematic. And a will schematic is probably one of the best tools we've come up with in the years. And it takes a visual look of what your will is about. Wills are very difficult to read. And I know why people don't read wills. There's a lot of legalese in it that's very difficult to understand. People get a bit lost in the wording on a will and don't understand what it means. We went through enough wills over time where we can go and take some of that writing and go put it into basically a schematic that shows you how the distribution of your estate will occur. And people get more value out of that. And many times I've actually put the will schematic down for them and they've said, well, that's not what I want. I said, well, that's what's in your will. And we went through the will. They said, well, that's not what I meant to happen. And we'd have to have the will rewritten because they didn't quite understand what their will said.
So number 1 is bringing in the wills. Number 2 is updating the wills. So that's number 8, updating your wills and powers of attorney on a fairly regular basis. Life changes. The people in your life changes. Your executors may have changed. Your executors may have gotten older. Your young children may have been your children before who weren't your executors, who should be your executors now. Yeah. Not everyone's alive. People have passed away. You want to have current documents that reflect your wishes.
Between every 3 and 5 years, your will should be reviewed.
Next up, number 9, having disability insurance. So disability insurance is one of those really strange things. I would guess that probably 95%, maybe 100% of our clients have house insurance. Probably 100% of our clients have car insurance. Probably 30% of our clients have disability insurance, if that. And I'm talking about those who are working. Under the age of 65, retirees, you get off the hook here.
Let's say you're 35 years old, right? And you're making $100,000 a year, right? And so 35 would go to 65. So you're making $100,000 a year. So you now have 30 years, let's say 30 years working. So 30 years at $100,000 a year. How much is that?
$3 million.
$3 million. So that's a $3 million asset that you've left uninsured. And,
and your house might be $1 million, but you've insured it, and your car might be $60,000, and you've insured that. But your $3 million of future income, you haven't insured.
You haven't insured. And it's going to be inflated. It's going to go up with inflation. It's a very dangerous thing not to insure. And most people assume they're not going to be disabled in their life. It's the biggest false assumption that I've ever seen. If you look at the stats on the amount of people that get disabled, it's stunning. In their working life, a large percentage of people go through a disability claim.
We even have an employee who's off for 2 or 3 months. I'll be honest, Assante doesn't have a great disability policy. It doesn't cover the first 90 days.
Yeah.
He's going to have to go on unemployment insurance, and his income's going to drop dramatically in those 3 months. And let's be honest, a lot of Canadians, working Canadians, are
paycheck to paycheck.
And if you miss 3 paychecks or 6 paychecks, depending how often you get paid, that's going to take a big hit, and it's going to take a long time to recover from that.
Yeah, no one's Superman.
Okay, back to insurance. Number 10 of resistance, having enough life insurance.
Yeah.
This mostly applies to those who are still working. And although there's another type of insurance called estate insurance that's really good for those who are retired. But let's use the example. Let's say 10 years ago, you went out and bought a policy for $500,000.
Yep.
Is that $500,000, and the policy's still going, maybe about a 20-year policy, is that still $500,000 today? Yep. What's the equivalent today?
It's probably worth $60,000 today.
Right?
Yeah. In buying power, it's been reduced by quite a bit.
A lot. And so you need to, just like your savings, you need to make sure your insurance is going up. And it's also important if you're insurable. Suddenly, if you've got a health issue and, you start getting into your 50s, 40s,
who doesn't have health
60s,
issues?
Who doesn't have a health issue, right? Sometimes they're severe, sometimes they're not. Sometimes it's an injury. Whatever it is, you may become uninsurable. So it's important to constantly look at your insurance every couple of years and make sure you got the right number.
Yep.
Resistance is huge. All we're trying to do today is to get our clients to resist a little bit less in terms of some of the things we're asking for. This is to help make you have a more successful retirement. That brings us to the end of another week. Thank you for joining us. This is Rob and Mike with Think Smart from the McClelland Financial Group of Assante Capital Management.
You've been listening to the McClelland Financial Group of Assante Capital Management Limited. Assante Capital Management Limited is a member of the Canadian Investor Protection Fund and the Investment Industry Regulatory Organization of Canada. Insurance products and services are provided through Assante Estate and Insurance Services Incorporated. This material is provided for general information and is subject to change without notice. Every effort has been made to compile this material from reliable sources. However, no warranty can be made as to its accuracy or completeness. Before acting on any of the previous information, please make sure to see a professional advisor for individual financial advice based on your personal circumstances. The opinions expressed are those of the authors and not necessarily those of Assante Capital Management Limited.